The face of Futian the Great stared at Futian in the lower sky. His huge face was one with the sky. It was like the starry sky that great Emperor Ziwei had transformed into. The face of Futian the Great stared at Futian in the lower sky. His huge face was one with the sky. It was like the starry sky that great Emperor Ziwei had transformed into. Now, he had turned into the vast heavens, forming the divine domain of the Great Path. This was his universe world. However, his face held cold, murderous intent right now. Futian was actually able to block his attacks as an emperor-to-be. He'd still gotten blasted down to the lower sky, but Futian the Great's attacks didn't hurt him. It was evident how frightening Futian was. How could he still live if Futian became a great emperor? At that time, there would only be death. In the ancient age of gods, there were differences between great emperors. It was just like the difference between various cultivators of any plane. Some people were destined to be extraordinary. An even more terrifying might fell upon Futian's body. This was his divine domain of the Great Path. The Futian divine power was everywhere. Many boundless golden stone pillars appeared at the top of the sky. Each stone pillar was carved with beautiful divine runes, and they glittered. The frightening divine power surged, and the sky was infused with a suffocating pressure. Right then, Futian felt the boundless heaviness. This attack would be even more frightening than the divine light that had plummeted. Futian the Great thought, and the stone pillars were hurled down instantly, rushing straight at Futian. Ignoring the distance between them, they arrived in an instant. Futian the Great was the sovereign of his divine domain of the Great Path. All of the energy here was under his control. The lives of cultivators who came here would also be under his control. That horrible might weighed down. Futian's body suddenly enlarged, transforming into an immense and boundless heavenly god. Divine light flowed around his body. He raised his head at the upper sky. The divine light of sun and moon flowed, and the divine power of the sun and moon surged. It blocked the attack for a moment, but it could not stop the stone pillars from dropping. The frightening divine power represented the path of the world here. Suddenly, countless arms appeared on Futian's godlike body. He seemed to have turned into the thousand-armed Buddha. The infinite number of arms lifted at the same time. At that moment, the divine power in his body roared aggressively and flooded into the arms. He cultivated his own micro-heavenly path. His strength came from the world within his body instead of being supplied by the outside world. Futian faced forward and raised his two arms to the sky. Instantly, the hundreds of thousands of arms made the same movement. They slapped at the sky, and the countless arms pushed out a horrifying divine seal at the same time. It was like thousands of Buddhas at once. Boom! There was an earth-shaking sound. The stone pillars that contained Futian divine power blasted down, crashing against the divine seal pushed out by the arms. It produced an extremely frightening shaking sound as if the heavens were about to crack apart. The divine power contained in Futian's divine seal was the divine power of the world. When it was sent out as the all-heaven Buddha's seal, it was like thousands of worlds were blasted out. The micro-heavenly path was not complete yet, but the divine power it contained was still extremely strong. Bang bang bang. The shocking explosive sound spread, and the surrounding space was about to shatter. The endlessly falling stone pillars shattered with the divine seal, shaking the space within millions of miles. However, there were no other cultivators in this divine domain of the Great Path, so no innocent people were harmed. Otherwise, such a terrifying attack was enough to produce a huge disaster. Then a golden diagram appeared in the dome of the sky. The diagram contained an immense number of runes, and each rune contained the power of Futian. Boom! The runes fell down in an endless stream. Each rune carried incredible force. It was like a portion of the heavens fell down. The Futian power gathered into these falling runes, so how terrifying were they? And they were also endless and infinite. The face of Futian the Great was still there. His eyes were cold and indifferent, gleaming murderously. He was the sovereign within the divine domain of the Great Path. He was the heavens. This diagram was the strongest divine technique that he had created. The Futian diagram contained endless murderous intent and could destroy all beings within a divine domain. Futian's thousands of hands attacked again. Countless divine seals flew out. The divine seals crashed against the Futian runes and shattered madly, but the sky was filled with Futian runes. They were endless. If he had to keep attacking using the divine seals from his arms, the result would already be determined. He would lose undoubtedly. With one thought, the space before him twisted, and a horrifying space vortex quickly appeared. The shocking space vortex expanded wildly. The frightening falling runes fell straight into it and then disappeared. Intense sound streamed out of the space vortex. More and more runes were swallowed into it, causing the space vortex to shake intensely. Divine power poured out of Futian's body. Billions of runes entered the space vortex. That frightening vortex was like a bottomless hole. World-level divine power of the law. Futian the Great looked down at Futian. His eyes were icy. Before, Futian had already displayed super-strong combat abilities and different divine power of the law of the Great Path. Today, he felt it even more deeply in the fight with Futian. Futian studied a different kind of divine power of the law. He had advanced by breaking the path, breaking off his path. The path that he did cultivate was not singular. It seemed to be a complete micro-heavenly path at the world level. If this was the case, then where was the end to Futian's cultivation? How strong would his final form be? If Futian became a great emperor, there would be no future for the rest of them. In the ancient age of gods, people like Futian were the cultivators who competed with the heavens. I cannot let this continue, Futian the Great thought. While the Futian diagram continued attacking, the figure of Futian the Great directly transformed into the Great Path in the dome of the sky. He became one with the sky transformed into his body. Or rather, his body had transformed into the sky. Futian felt the supreme might. He looked up to the heavens. Futian the Great had already transformed into the sky, and this kind of force was huge. No matter how he enlarged his body, he would still be like an ant before the sky and seem extremely insignificant. Above the sky, the humongous Futian the Great extended his arm and grabbed toward Futian below him. Futian the Great had transformed into the sky, so his arm was the sky's arm. It covered the entire space, and there was nowhere to hide when it came down. Every direction was within reach of the palm. Futian wouldn't be able to escape from this huge handprint even if he used enhanced agility. There were huge, frightening booms, and the heavenly handprint grew closer and closer. The sky above Futian's head was pitch black, blocked by that heavenly handprint. If he got caught by that huge hand, he would probably be like the size of an ant. He didn't know if the other could even squeeze him when the hand clenched. Futian stood there calmly, not trying to dodge. The Futian Great Palm Seal covered the entire air, coming down at him. Futian stood there calmly, not trying to dodge. The Futian Great Palm Seal covered the entire air, coming down at him. Frightening divine power flowed across Futian's body. His body seemed to be made out of divine power. It released incredible divine light that pierced one's eyes. Under that divine glow, Futian's body moved. He dove straight at the huge palm that was grabbing at him. The Futian Great Palm Seal contained immense Futian divine power. The might was enough to collapse the sky and land and send Great Emperor Tebes sprawling to the ground, unable to resist, but under this extreme Futian might, Futian actually went up against it. He transformed into a streak of light and rushed directly toward the Futian Great Palm Seal. The Futian Great Palm Seal landed, blasting onto Futian's body. However, Futian's body transformed into light that went into the humongous palm seal. He broke it apart from the middle, stabbing in and going upward until he penetrated it. A gaping hole appeared in the Futian Great Palm Seal. It was a hole, broken by Futian's body of way. Right then, Futian's figure appeared on the Futian Great Palm Seal, standing on the back of the hand. As the Futian Great Palm Seal continued to move, his silvery hair danced in the wind, and his white robes flapped. Futian the Great, transformed into the sky, stared at Futian and asked, "What divine power is this?" At this point of the battle, He naturally realized that Yi Futian had broken the path and created many types of divine power. These divine powers were different from all of the cultivators he'd seen before who'd broken the path. Yi Futian was the path itself and could transform his body into the path at any time. Even though he was a great emperor-to-be, his combat ability was already comparable to that of a great emperor. His great emperor-to-be plane was still incomplete, but his divine power was strong enough to match a great emperor's divine power. He naturally understood what this meant. It meant that the level of Yi Futian's divine power was higher than his. He just had a lower plane. How frightening would he be if Yi Futian's divine power was completed one day and his plane caught up? It was unimaginable. At least, he would definitely not be Yi Futian's match. He might be like the extraordinary ancient great emperors who had fought against the heavens and path. He did not think that in this life, he could personally witness a junior appear with this talent and even be his enemy. Yi Futian did not answer Futian the Great's question. He looked up at that huge face. At that moment, he suddenly had confidence. They had not truly exchanged blows before, so he was unclear about his own abilities. He only knew that great emperors-to-be were not their match at all. This had already been proved before, especially in the 20-some years cultivating in the 99 heavens. His micro-heavenly path had been evolving, and he was getting stronger. He'd even studied super-strong divine power. It turned out that he could already fight with great emperors now. He'd always known that his cultivation was special. After breaking the path, he'd created the micro-heavenly path, creating his own world, but he did not think he would be this strong. Before him was a great emperor returned from the past. He had not recovered to his optimal state, but he had still reached completion, returning as a great emperor. He was not at a disadvantage even before such a strong figure. This meant that he could battle with great emperors already. This is all a great emperor is? Yi Futian looked up at the sky and uttered with an extremely arrogant voice. His long silver hair fluttered in the wind, and he looked extraordinary. In the span of a thought, an infinite number of divine swords appeared in the air. Every sword was pointed at the dome of the sky and radiated with frightening divine power. Futian the Great felt the extremely powerful divine power and grew somber. The swords formed by divine power circled Yi Futian and increased in number, resonating with Yi Futian's body. Go! Yi Futian's mind twitched, and the countless divine swords attacked simultaneously. Every sword was formed by heaven-slaying divine power. Futian the Great huffed coldly. Countless divine seals fell from the dome of the sky. They radiated brilliantly and attacked the incoming divine swords. They were also infinite and blocked all of the divine swords. Bang! The first divine sword clashed against a divine seal and emitted a horrifying bang. The entire space shook violently. Under Futian the Great's shocked stare, his Futian divine seal actually shattered. The divine sword stabbed through it. Yet the frightening swords of heaven-slaying divine power were still charging towards him, about to pierce the sky that he had transformed into. Even though Futian the Great knew that the divine power that Yi Futian studied had a higher class than his Futian divine power, he never imagined that his attack would break the Futian divine seal so easily. He was a great emperor, and yet his divine seal had collapsed under the attack of a great emperor-to-be. There was a muffled sound. The divine seals that filled the air rained down endlessly, almost burying the entire land. The divine swords pierced seal after seal as if they were infinite and could never reach the end. Yi Futian still stood on the back of the great Futian palm. The hand waved, and the divine power of space flooded out instantly as if creating a space passageway. Then the divine swords flowed into it. In an instant, the heaven-slaying swords appeared at the top of the sky, going for that portion of the sky. That portion of the sky had been formed by Futian the Great. If Yi Futian wanted to defeat Futian the Great, he had to forcefully break open the sky. The divine swords arrived, blasting against the sky. There were many horrifying sounds that shook the heavens. That part of the sky also trembled, but Futian remained. He did not shatter. This was the great path divine domain of a great emperor. It had been formed by Futian divine power and was incredibly sturdy. Even the heaven-slaying swords could not break it apart. They only made the sky shake. the space within the divine domain also trembled violently. The huge eyes of Futian the Great continued to stare at Yi Futian. His eyes were countless times bigger than Yi Futian. This is all a great emperor is? Futian the Great stared at Yi Futian. But still unshakable by you. Yi Futian looked up at that huge face. An unmatchable storm whipped up around his body. That moment, the great path divine power in his body exploded fiercely. Yi Futian's body enlarged instantly. His hay continued growing, 100 zhang, 10,000, and 100 zhang. While his body skyrocketed, his divine power also strengthened madly. The divine power of his micro-heavenly path fused into the godlike body, transforming into every part of this body, entering his limbs, bones, and internal organs. Even his head became extremely sharp, containing heaven-slaying intent. Bang! With a huge sound, Yi Futian stepped on that palm, finally shattering the palm seal. At the same time, Yi Futian's immensely huge body shot straight into the sky. Everything in his path was destroyed. The Futian divine seals and divine light all turned to dust and ashes under the godlike great path body, as if no type of power could stop him right now. Was a great emperor truly unshakable? Divine technique, heaven slay. Divine technique, heaven slay. The heaven-slaying divine technique this time exploded with heaven-slaying divine power. Yi Futian had transformed into the path, and his entire body was made up of different divine power. Even though he continued to use the previous name of heaven-slaying divine sword, it was completely different. It was more than a few levels more advanced. This was a true heaven-slaying divine technique. It could destroy a portion of the sky. In the sky, Futian the Great had a grave expression. His huge and boundless hand left from the sky, transforming into a huge Futian divine seal. Merely the divine seal's light contained the power to destroy the world. It repressed and shattered every being in the world. This was the attack from Futian. A god would block and kill a god. The two extremely shocking attacks crossed and crashed in the air. The world instantly cracked, and even the air was about to explode. That destructive storm swept through the entire divine domain of the Great Path. Even more shocking was that the great palm seal that represented Futian shattered. The heaven-slaying divine sword formed by Yi Futian stabbed through the Futian divine seal, causing it to crumble and turn to dust. Carrying supreme divine light, the heaven-slaying divine sword continued upward. Instantly, it passed through everything, blasting into the dome of the heavens. The sky produced a frightening sound. Transformed into the sky, the face of Futian the Great changed. This attack that carried divine power seemed to have been prepared for him. It could pass through the sky. Yi Futian had created the heaven-slaying divine power after years of experiments in his micro-heavenly path. He added many types of power of the law and finally produced heaven-slaying strength. If his micro-heavenly path were completed, the heaven-slaying divine power would improve, and he would be able to destroy a part of the sky with one thought. Right then, it hit the sky formed by Futian the Great, and cracks appeared in this part of the sky. Frightening divine light appeared from every crack, and some places even showed signs of collapse. And right now, Yi Futian's attack still had not stopped. The heaven-slaying divine sword he had transformed into blasted onto the sky. There were still countless divine swords nearby that kept going up, hitting the places that had cracked. Countless heaven-slaying divine swords stabbed into the sky, wanting to break it apart and penetrate the sky. Boom! Countless beams of piercing divine light burst out. A gust of supreme Futian divine power shattered the surrounding divine swords. Yi Futian's body also had to bear the supreme might. The next moment, Futian disappeared from this space. The world returned to how it had been before. A beam of divine light from Yi Futian's body shot straight toward the dome of the sky, going towards the outer sky. His figure appeared there, looming in place. He stared above his head. Futian the Great had appeared there. However, Futian the Great no longer had the arrogant attitude from before. When he looked at Yi Futian, he carried cold, murderous intent and a tinge of fear. Yi Futian was not a great emperor yet, but he was already able to threaten him, almost breaking apart the Futian and destroying the divine domain of the Great Path. He realized that he did not have to wait. The current Yi Futian was already a threat, and it was difficult for Haotian the Great to kill him. What's wrong? Cultivators of the ancient Haotian clan stared at the two figures in the sky. Yi Futian was not dead? Haotian the Great could not kill him? What was going on? They were not the only ones. The space passageway was still there. Some cultivators near the Yi Imperial Palace in the God's Ruins continent had not gotten locked up hurried over from afar. They also looked toward the other end of the passageway. At the top of the vast sky, they saw the white-haired figure standing in the heavens, facing the great emperor. He looked unaffected. At that moment, countless people clenched their fists and had excited expressions. Divine light flowed across Yi Futian's body. Even though there was a great distance between them, they could still feel his powerful might. He had not gotten killed. His aura was still as before. He hadn't gotten seriously hurt. What did this mean? Haotian the Great could not bring down Yi Futian. He was already able to fight against a great emperor. He could be known as a god because of this battle. The current Yi Futian could fight with a great emperor already. This would become the disaster of the Haotian clan. The current Yi Futian could fight a great emperor. If Haotian the Great could not kill Yi Futian today, one could imagine what would happen in the future. After this, Haotian the Great would be even less of a match. He was already a returned great emperor, while Yi Futian could continue advancing. Between the two, Yi Futian would only become stronger as time passed. Old God. Yi Futian looked up at Haotian the Great and said, "Your ending is my beginning." That utterance proved everyone's guesses even more. The strong cultivators of the Haotian clan had come with extreme confidence to witness the return of their great emperor and kill Yi Futian and the Yi Imperial Palace. But right now, they felt cold shivers all over and felt fear. This was an extreme difference in emotions. After countless years of waiting, they finally welcomed the return of their great emperor. The ancient god clan had become an emperor-level force, and they hoped to go toward the peak, becoming one of the strongest forces in the world. Today, they came to the Yi Imperial Palace to kill Yi Futian. They wanted to use Yi Futian's blood as a sacrifice to announce the return of Haotian the Great and the rise of the ancient god clan. But instead, this was the result. Haotian the Great could not kill Yi Futian. Yi Futian even arrogantly said, "Your ending is my beginning." Haotian the Great was silent. He did not respond to Yi Futian's words. He had pushed the Haotian divine power to its max in the previous exchange, but he still could not kill Yi Futian. In fact, his Haotian was almost broken apart by Yi Futian. Countless cracks had appeared. He was more apparent than anyone about what this meant. If they continued fighting, he would not even have the upper hand, let alone be able to kill Yi Futian. "Go," Haotian the Great uttered. Then he waved his hand, sweeping all the strong cultivators of the Haotian clan, and left this space. Instantly, the might in the air dissipated. Haotian the Great and the cultivators of the Haotian clan had disappeared, leaving this place. Yi Futian looked at the disappeared figures, feeling a bit surprised. He did not think Haotian the Great would be decisive and give up directly. Haotian the Great could not kill him this time, which meant that there would be less hope in the future. Killing him would only be harder. Going downward, Yi Futian returned to the Yi Imperial Palace. The space vortex had disappeared, and everything returned to normal. Yi Futian waved his hand, and the restrictive forces surrounding the vast territory of the Yi Imperial Palace disappeared. All the strong figures appeared on the ground. When they saw Yi Futian's figure, their hearts pounded in extreme shock. He was okay. Yi Futian was all right. They had already given up hope earlier, but the skies had cleared. This meant that Yi Futian's current abilities were already enough to fight with a great emperor. From now on, who could touch the Yi Imperial Palace? They couldn't help but think of the Buddha of Destiny's prediction. Perhaps, Yi Futian really would be able to defeat Donghuang the Great when the time was up. Palace Lord. The cultivators of the Yi Imperial Palace all called out. Many people had expressions of reverence. Some Yi Imperial Palace disciples in the Renhuang Plain had very fanatic gazes. Palace Lord. The cultivators of the Yi Imperial Palace all called out. Many people had expressions of reverence. Some Yi Imperial Palace disciples in the Renhuang Plain had very fanatic gazes. Their palace lord, Yi Futian, was already able to fight with a great emperor. This meant that Yi Futian was comparable to great emperors. The Yi Imperial Palace counted as a true emperor-level force now. After Yi Futian landed, Hua Jiyu, Gu Donglu, and the others surrounded him. Zhuge Mingyu asked, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Yi Futian answered, smiling. "Hao Qian the Great can't defeat me anymore," so he retreated. Even if he continued fighting, he wouldn't be able to succeed. Leaving is the wisest choice. Zhuge Mingyue had a bright smile in her eyes. She seemed very calm, but there were deep emotions within. The youngest little brother from the past was now standing at such a height already. He would soon reach the top and stand at the pinnacle of the world. He didn't kill you so that he will die in the future. I think he left to wait for the others to reach the great emperor plane, Zhuge Mingyue analyzed. After all, they're all great emperors from the ancient times and not very far from the great emperor plane. Hao Qian the Great took the step first, but the others will become great emperors too. By then, they will unite and come together, just like last time. Yes. Yi Futian nodded. He wondered if he should visit the divine prefecture and wipe out those ancient god clans to avoid future threats. "Let's return first," Yi Futian said. Everyone nodded, and they all returned to the Yi Imperial Palace. This time had been dangerous but not damaging. Even Yi Futian did not know what level his actual combat abilities were, let alone them. They did not expect that he could fight against a great emperor already. It was naturally a pleasant surprise. Even Yi Futian had lost count of how many times the force he led had gone through life or death threats all these years. They had been extremely passive during each crisis and had to borrow all types of power in order to survive. Now, he had finally reached this step. In the future, it would be rare for others to threaten him. Yi Futian's group returned to the Yi Imperial Palace. Outside, countless cultivators traveled to the Yi Imperial Palace. When they arrived outside the palace, it was like an extremely pious pilgrimage. The original realm finally had a being comparable to the great emperors. News of the battle between Hao Qian the Great and Yi Futian swept through all of the forces, reaching the enormous emperor-level forces with the fastest speed. Those emperor-level forces all stayed silent and did not release any sound, but everyone knew that there must be a shockwave going through all the emperor-level forces now. All the realms shook violently from this as well. Back then, when the God's Ruins continent had appeared, the Buddha of Destiny had foretold the coming of the Age of Gods. After that, the portion of Heavenly Path appeared, and great emperors really did return. But who would have thought that the first great emperor who had returned in public would be countered by Yi Futian after going to kill him with an unstoppable force and leave in defeat? Everyone knew what this meant. An entirely new era was beginning now. This would be the preamble to the start of the Age of Gods. The Seven Realms and Original Realm would usher in a new era, the Great Age of Gods. Perhaps, there would even be God Slayer. Yi Futian could already force back Hao Qian the Great. What was next? It was not impossible for him to kill a great emperor. In the Devil Imperial Palace of the Devil World, the Devil Emperor heard the report, and his eyes had a deep look. His gaze pierced the void, looking into the distance. Yi Futian had not yet become a great emperor, but he had fought with one and made Hao Qian the Great leave in defeat. The micro-heavenly path that he had created was unordinary. This made him suspect what Yi Futian's identity really was. Who was the one that he'd raised? "Keep an eye on the Yi Imperial Palace," the Devil Emperor ordered coldly. "Yes." The person nodded and then retreated. The Devil Emperor's eyes were frightening. The times were changing. What would the future era be like? In the Dark Court, the Dark Sovereign also received the news, but he was quite happy. Yi Futian could already fight against Hao Qian the Great. This meant that he would pose a significant threat to Donghuang the Great. At the same time, the Human Realm, Empty Divine Realm, Heaven Realm, and Donghuang Imperial Palace of the Divine Prefecture all had different reactions. However, Yi Futian himself did not know about any of this. The battle made him realize he could fight against a great emperor, and he was quite happy, but this happiness only lasted a short while. After that, he continued cultivating in isolation, bringing all the core figures into his micro-heavenly path to cultivate. He had a sense of urgency. This battle was enough to spread his name across the world, and the 6 emperors would pay more attention to him. This kind of reputation wasn't necessarily a good thing. He would get more attention. In the 7 realms, it was clear that he did not have any real friends. Yu Sheng and Yi Qingyao had not fully grasped control yet. They couldn't represent the devil realm or dark world. Thus, he had to become stronger. He would only be a bit safer if, one day, none of the 6 emperors could threaten to defeat him. The 6 emperors had been emperors for many years, and it was all in the era after the heavenly path collapsed. Yi Futian guessed that their abilities were above that of Haotian the Great. Thus, he didn't dare to get careless. Under the micro-heavenly path, everyone bathed in the divine light of the law, comprehending and cultivating. They improved speedily. Cultivating in Yi Futian's micro-heavenly path was cheating. It was like the 8 legions in ancient times. The heavenly path bestowed the power of the law to them directly, letting them rule the law of the world. However, this micro-heavenly path had been created by Yi Futian himself. He was qualified to cheat. He represented the heavenly path. Of course, other than that, they still had to feel for themselves. The 8 legions under the heavenly path back then had all been chosen because they possessed the extraordinary talent to be the representatives of the heavenly path in the world. Right then, Yi Futian's figure appeared in the vast void. He could see the entire world and, naturally, also saw the cultivation statuses of the Yi Imperial Palace members. Still too slow, Yi Futian murmured. The cultivators of the Yi Imperial Palace were not untalented. They could be said to be very strong, and all had had great opportunities later. However, their cultivation times were still too short. Time, Yi Futian murmured. Whether it was him or the cultivators of the Yi Imperial Palace, they all needed time. In any world, time was constant, but in a different world, time might be different. When he cultivated in the spirit mountain of Western Heaven, he had seen it recorded in the Buddhist scriptures that time had been the same when different Buddhas cultivated in a different world. There was also the stance that time was not real, it did not exist and had been made up. Time itself was an empty concept. Even though people had different sense of time in different situations, he thought about this problem early on. He was the ruler of this heavenly path, so could he control the time of this micro-heavenly path too? Yi Futian sank deep into his own thoughts. Everything in the world was in his mind, operating according to their own law. Yi Futian sank deep into his own thoughts. Everything in the world was in his mind, operating according to their own law. He sensed everything operating while studying the passage of time. The thousands of operations became more apparent. The concept of time seemed to be clearer too. In the Buddhist scriptures, Buddhas cultivated in different worlds, and some worlds, one day would pass while 1 year would have passed in another world. His micro-heavenly path was a world different from the outside world. Time was just a created concept. It reflected the operations of everything in the world and was also law under the heavenly path. It was just more abstract. In reality, the concept of time had not yet developed in his micro-heavenly path. It was still calculated according to the time in the outside world. If I change the operations of all beings in the micro-heavenly path, then will this world be different from the outside world? Yi Futian thought. He was entirely in the state of pondering, immersed in it. Under his thoughts, some slight changes appeared in how all beings in the world operated. He also focused on the cultivators of the Yi Imperial Palace. They did not realize this. Everything in the world was relative. When you were in a world, and only the laws of one being's operation changed, you would be able to catch it quickly. But if everything in the world changed simultaneously, it would be like nothing had changed. When a man moved, they could easily feel that they were moving. But if the land carried him along as it moved, then he would be still. The cultivators of the Yi Imperial Palace were all immersed in their cultivation, and no one discovered any changes. Their abilities also kept improving. Bathed in the law of the micro-heavenly path, their changes were dramatic. They improved every day, and as time passed, there were gradually more and more near deities in the Yi Imperial Palace. They started studying their own world and even created their own divine powers. Of course, this was also under the micro-heavenly path, just like the cultivators under the ancient heavenly path. Even if they followed the heavenly path and became great emperors, they would still be under the heavenly path and unable to break free from it. That day, Yi Futian was still studying when he saw Gu Donglu raise his head in one part of the world. "Little brother," he called out softly. Yi Futian's figure appeared before him as soon as he finished speaking. Clearly, Gu Donglu knew that Yi Futian was aware of everything in this world, so he called out directly, and Yi Futian appeared as expected. "Third brother," Yi Futian said with a smile, walking towards Gu Donglu. "Did you run into problems in your cultivation?" "Yes." Gu Donglu nodded. "Little brother, how is your cultivation? When can the micro-heavenly path can be completed?" "Not sure." Yi Futian nodded. The great emperor Tebes in the outside world was once great emperors, so it's easy for them to return to the great emperor plane. It's not too hard for other great emperor Tebes either, but my cultivation is a bit unique. It seems to be a bit different from everyone, and I still haven't found the specific way to become emperor. I can only continue to perfect the micro-heavenly path until it becomes complete itself. Little brother, you're already able to fight with great emperors as a great emperor to be plain. Of course, your cultivation is different from the others. Otherwise, what's the point for the rest of us? This is quite expected. Because your cultivation is special, becoming an emperor might differ from the others. It will be harder, Gu Donglu said. This micro-heavenly path is already very similar to the heavenly path world of the heaven realm. This is a complete heavenly path world. If it becomes perfect, then you can even replace the heavenly path. Thus, this road will not be simple. Have you thought about this before? Yes. Yi Futian nodded. I felt this, which is why I have a sense of urgency. In the last battle, you could already fight against Futian the Great, Gu Donglu said. You'll only become stronger and stronger. You're already not that different from a great emperor. If you're complete, then it will be rare for you to have an enemy in the world. It's naturally difficult. Nowadays, I have already figured out my divine power, but it was with your help. Even though this can help me cultivate more quickly, I won't have an advantage if I encounter a great emperor in the outside world. Brother, what do you mean? Yi Futian had a confused expression. Break the path. Gu Donglu said. Even if you reach enlightenment and completion in the future, my limit will still be a great emperor under your heavenly path and possibly be comparable to Futian the Great. Gu Donglu wanted to try his road and figure out his path. Even though I was quite successful in breaking my path, it's still an extremely dangerous method. You might head towards the point of no return, Yi Futian said. Cultivating under my heavenly path, becoming emperor is only a matter of time. But breaking the path to cultivate might be a dead end. Even if you succeed, there are still dangers. Third brother, have you thought clearly? I know. Gu Donglu nodded. In that case, I support you. Yi Futian did not discourage him. Gu Donglu had always had his own opinions and was also proud. Fulfilling his path and becoming a great emperor with Yi Futian's help was easy, but it was not what he wanted in cultivation. Plus, seeing that his little brother had created his own micro-heavenly path, he naturally wanted to take a step further as well and forge his own road. It doesn't seem to be far from the end of the 500-year emperor fate of Donghuang the Great, Gu Donglu said. I don't know what will be of the foretelling of the Buddha of destiny. The outside world is probably all waiting right now. Let's go out to see, Yi Futian said. With a thought, Gu Donglio's body disappeared. In the Yi Imperial Palace, all of the strong figures were still busy with their cultivations. Not everyone had entered Yi Futian's micro-heavenly path, only the core figures. The two walked to the top of the steps outside the Yi Imperial Palace's Grand Pavilion. There were guards there who had very strong cultivators. Palace Lord, Third Sir. The guards bowed in greeting when they saw Yi Futian arrive. How is the outside world? Yi Futian asked. In these countless months, a lot of information about Palace Lord spread through the outside world, the guard replied. In the Divine Prefecture, the few ancient god clans have an even tighter alliance now. It's said that some of the ancient emperors cultivated together. They're worried that you will go kill them. Countless months. Gu Donglu asked with a surprised expression. Yes, it has been half a year since Palace Lord defeated Futian the Great, the guard said. Gu Donglu was stunned at his words. He seemed to realize something and turned to gaze at Yi Futian. Had he misperceived the change in time? There was only one explanation, because it was Yi Futian's micro-heavenly path. The law of time changed. Yi Futian transmitted his voice to Gu Donglu. Gu Donglu's heart trembled. In the time he felt, nearly 6 years had left. He had indeed been cultivating during all those years. Yi Futian was already able to change the time in the micro-heavenly path. Yi Futian changed the laws of the world of the micro-heavenly path, causing the latter's time to be different from that of the outside world. It was around 10 times faster. Yi Futian changed the laws of the world of the micro-heavenly path, causing the latter's time to be different from that of the outside world. It was around 10 times faster. A day outside was around 10 days in the world of the micro-heavenly path. Hence, while half a year had passed in the outside world, almost 6 years had passed inside. For cultivators with high cultivation planes, this was naturally extremely beneficial. If they were just in an independent space that was part of this world, it would be meaningless no matter how they changed the time. However, because the world of the micro-heavenly path was not part of their reality, they had more time to cultivate. One for the members of Yi Imperial Palace, this was undoubtedly very advantageous for them. They could use this time to cultivate. It was also possible that they could continue to magnify such a change. For now, it was around 10 times. As Yi Futian's plane grew, he might be able to create an even more significant disparity. If he could one day make a day in the outside world be a year in the world of the micro-heavenly path, how terrifying would that be? Of course, the benefit of such a time difference was relative. That would not necessarily be a good thing for a mortal with a limited lifespan. The outside world would change every day, and the great emperor-to-be figures would gradually reach the imperial realm. Their cultivation would match that of ancient times, returning to levels once absent from the world for many years. However, all of this had nothing to do with the members of Yi Imperial Palace. Yi Futian and Gu Donglu continued with their cultivation. Gu Donglu severed his path and cultivated while Yi Futian comprehended the power of the law of time. The latter wanted to understand how to control the law of the great path of time. He wondered whether he could utilize it as an attack in combat. In the Divine Prefecture, countless cultivators were gathered on a mountain in the Taishang domain. In the distance, terrifying divine tribulations gradually dissipated. On the divine mountain, a peerless figure stood erect. It was an elder. He was dressed in modest clothes. However, right now, an astonishing emperor's might emanated from his figure. Before this, many people did not know that the Taishang domain had such a powerful existence. The latter had ascended to the imperial realm. Congratulations, senior, for reaching the imperial realm, a voice called out. Taishang domain chief had come in person to offer his congratulations. He bowed respectfully towards the elder. The elder swept a glance at him. His gaze was actually very sharp. He took a deep breath and then looked up at the sky. He closed his eyes and sensed the aura in the surrounding space. He seemed to be indulging in it. He had finally returned. During the ancient era, he had already proven his way and was granted the title of Tai. He was one of the top 10 sword gods of the divine domain, Tai sword god. During the collapse of the heavenly path, he had merged into his sword spirit and thus escaped the calamity. After countless decades of waiting, he finally encountered the rejuvenation of the heavenly path. The chance for him to prove his way had come, and he successfully reached the imperial realm once again. The surrounding cultivators all had their eyes on him. He stood casually on the divine mountain, yet he looked as sharp as a divine sword. Right at this moment, the wind howled and the clouds churned. The sky opened up and a space passageway appeared. At the other end of it stood an illusory figure. When the crowd saw this figure, they bowed and greeted, "Greetings, Your Highness." The person was none other than Donghuang the Great, the ruler of the Divine Prefecture. "Senior, congratulations for proving your way and reaching the imperial realm," Donghuang the Great said with a smile as he stood at the other end of the space passageway. He sounded sincere. Sword God cast a glance at the passageway with an indifferent gaze. The current world was very different from that of the past. There were merely 6 great emperors dominating the world now. Compared to the glorious situation during the Age of the Gods, the current era could be described as pathetic. Dong Huang the Great had also known of the existence of Sword God. Many years ago, the former had invited the latter to cultivate in Dong Huang Imperial Palace. However, Sword God turned down his offer. Now, Dong Huang the Great extended him the invitation once again, saying, "I have invited Senior to cultivate in Imperial Palace before this. Now that you have proven your way at the Imperial Realm, would you join us? We can explore different cultivation methods together. Currently, there are a few cultivators in the palace who will soon prove their ways." All right, Sword God agreed to his request decisively. Then he entered the space passageway. In the blink of an eye, he arrived inside Dong Huang Imperial Palace. Dong Huang the Great showed himself and personally welcomed Sword God. A few great emperors-to-be came forward to congratulate him too. Yet another great emperor has appeared in the Divine Prefecture. The cultivation world is fortunate to welcome the return of the Age of the Gods, Dong Huang the Great said, beaming. Sword God did not respond to that. His facial expression remained indifferent throughout. He looked at Dong Huang the Great and said, "Dong Huang Imperial Palace should have gathered many divine items over the years. Your collection should contain many divine techniques and secrets of the cultivation world. Where are they now?" Since the 6 great emperors ruled over the entire world, the best stuff, including the divine items, would undoubtedly be in their collections. Sword God had just rejoined the Imperial Realm. He needed to strengthen himself so that his power could develop further. The surrounding cultivators frowned when they heard his question. They stopped smiling and appeared irritated. Dong Huang the Great invited him over. He had just arrived and he straight up asked about the divine items. He seemed to have no respect for all of them here. "The divine techniques are in my Imperial Palace. If you want to cultivate them, you can follow me in," Dong Huang the Great replied calmly. He was not angered by the other party's rude behavior. His excellent temperament was well exemplified. "Give all of them to me. Besides that, prepare a separate palace for me. Order your men to find me the finest divine items on earth," Sword God commanded. His voice was arrogant, and he spoke as though he was superior to Dong Huang the Great. During ancient times, he was the most exceptional sword god. In his opinion, the current great emperors could not hold a candle to him. Even the well-mannered Dong Huang the Great couldn't help but reveal an annoyed expression when he heard this. He said, "It is good news to the world that the Age of the Gods is coming. I invited you here to cultivate together and learn from each other. However, what you said has crossed the line." Sword God swept a glance at Dong Huang the Great. Sword seemed to shoot out from his eyes and entered into the eyes of Dong Huang the Great. At the same time, the palace was surrounded by endless sword will. With a shift of his will, Sword God could make the divine swords descend upon the palace and flatten this place. "You are a junior. How dare you disrespect a predecessor god?" chided Sword God with a cold voice. Dong Huang the Great's gaze similarly turned as sharp as a sword. He looked at Sword God, and an invisible divine power immediately burst forth and enveloped the vast space. The whole world seemed to have come to a halt when his majestic divine power erupted. The divine swords floating in midair shook violently. Then they plummeted to the ground uncontrollably. The facial expression of Sword God changed drastically. He sensed that he could no longer control his own divine power. Time seemed to have frozen. He was actually suppressed by the divine power of the other party. As a great emperor from ancient times, he had always looked down on the current great emperors. From his point of view, they were merely fortunate cultivators who managed to prove their way during the collapse of the heavenly path. Their paths were incomplete. They paled into insignificance when compared to the predecessor gods. However, at this very moment, the divine power emanated by Dong Huang the Great subverted his belief. From the looks of it, even though the great paths during the Age of the Gods were perfect, there were many scum *GS2, Dong Huang the Great commented. Then he pointed his finger forward. His revelation divine power surged forward and pierced through the body of Tai Sword God. Divine power was stirred up around Tai Sword God's body as he unleashed his power to its limit. Nevertheless, both his divine power and his divine body turned into dust instantly. He was completely wiped off the face of the earth. The death of Tai Sword God did not cause too great a stir. The members of the divine prefecture merely knew that a new great emperor had been born. He had then been accepted by Donghuang the Great into Donghuang Imperial Palace. The death of Tai Sword God did not cause too great a stir. The members of the divine prefecture merely knew that a new great emperor had been born. He had then been accepted by Donghuang the Great into Donghuang Imperial Palace. Who would have imagined that Sword God would be so arrogant and supercilious? He acted as though he was the true master of the divine prefecture. This angered Donghuang the Great, who immediately killed Tai Sword God. The latter was the first great emperor who perished after the world began to change. His death could be considered to be tragic. However, he was only reaping what he sowed. He believed himself to be an ancient emperor figure and acted very arrogantly, looking down on the current great emperors. He misjudged the ability of the recent great emperors and was crushed by one of them, unable to put up a fight at all. This battle also allowed the members of Donghuang Imperial Palace to witness the ability of Donghuang the Great. Essentially, even they had never seen Donghuang the Great fight. After the chaotic era ended, the divine prefecture was unified, and the various worlds returned to a time of peace and order. Ever since then, Donghuang the Great had never needed to fight. After many years, this was the only time he had fought. With the flick of his finger, he had slaughtered an ancient emperor. Compared to 5 centuries ago, it was apparent that Donghuang the Great's ability was much more powerful now. Nevertheless, the emperor-level forces had caught wind of the news. They had their spies monitoring the movements of the various forces in secret. It was impossible for them not to hear of such a massive incident in Donghuang Imperial Palace. Currently, Futian was still cultivating in Imperial Palace. Inside the world of the micro-heavenly path, the space was vast. Futian wielded a spear materialized from his divine power. Then he sent out strike after strike. There were 100 million of his duplicates exercising the same technique simultaneously in the same space. All of them comprehended this spear technique at the same time. This scene was undoubtedly shocking for any onlooker. Like cultivating heaven-slaying divine sword, Futian comprehended the spear technique by stabbing out countless spears in tandem. His strike count reached an astronomical number in a single day. Time flew by. They were unaware of time passing while they were cultivating. In the blink of an eye, a few years had passed in the world of the micro-heavenly path. Futian became more skillful in his spear technique. Each time he struck, fewer and fewer spears appeared. Finally, one day, only one spear appeared when he attacked. When he thrust the spear forward, his body transformed into an illusory figure. It was as though he never truly existed in this space. However, his spear stabbed into one of the stars. A dull thud sounded. Time and space began to warp as a terrifying storm crushed the star into dust. Its debris was sucked into the twisted time and space. Futian retreated as he witnessed the star collapsing and being destroyed. When he saw that it was consumed instantly, he could sense his heart beating fast. He was astonished by his own power. Since he started cultivating the law of time and space, he aimed to create an even more powerful attack. He intended to merge his comprehension of the law in his divine technique. From the looks of it, he had succeeded in doing so. Although his new attack was still in the testing phase, the might that it unleashed was already very frightening. If he continued perfecting it, it would surely become even stronger. If I forge a spear with the divine power of heaven slaying and charge it up with the law of time and space before attacking, what kind of might would it unleash? Futian thought to himself. His ability had leveled up after he comprehended the law of time and space. As a result, this world of the micro-heavenly path was better constructed. He had improved much compared to when he fought Futian the Great. He was far from perfect, but he improved consistently. It was as though there was no plateau in his cultivation journey, and he could always become stronger. However, the law of the great path that he created was derived from his own world. He was unsure whether his law was applicable in the outside world when his micro-heavenly path reached perfection and became a major heavenly path. He had never altered time or space directly. If he reached the level where he could directly alter time or space, he could not imagine how powerful he would be. Even now, Yi Futian had a feeling that he could defeat Haotian the Great. Yi Futian's consciousness enveloped this space. He had achieved admirable improvement in these few years. He had a better understanding of the law of time. He was able to catalyze time in this space to a greater extent. Therefore, even though he had spent a few years inside this world, not much time had passed in the real world. If he continued cultivating like this, the time difference between the outside world and this space would only grow larger. Due to having extra time inside this place, he kept improving non-stop. In the process of improving, he could widen the time difference even further. This was an endless cycle. Third elder brother has comprehended the path, mumbled Yi Futian as he looked over in the direction of Gu Donglu with a smile. Gu Donglu had comprehended his own divine law power. After severing his path and cultivation, he reforged it and comprehended its law. This was a metamorphosis. Although there was no huge change to his cultivation plane, he had more potential to tap into along this path. Lord Qin, Blind Tai, and many others had reached the near-deity plane. They were all pushing to reach the great emperor to be plane. In the future, in this world of the micro-heavenly path, with his help and the advantage of time, all the cultivators of Yi Imperial Palace could cultivate at a rapid pace and chase up to the top cultivators in the outside world. Whether they could walk the path of the emperor depended on their comprehension and luck. Yi Futian could help them, but he could not directly create great emperors. Right then, Yi Futian's will shifted, and his figure vanished. In the cultivation court of Yi Imperial Palace, Yi Futian opened his eyes. His figure flashed and disappeared from his original spot. When he appeared once again, he saw that many cultivators had come. Palace Lord Yi, someone called out to Yi Futian. They were cultivators from the devil world. Yu Xing was present, as well as Yan Giyi and the others. The people here were all cultivators who had reached the great emperor to be plane. There were even 2 great emperor figures from the devil world among them. Their figures emanated menacing auras. By just casually standing there, they gave off terrifying pressure. Yi Futian stood there and could easily sense all this. However, he was already someone who could forge a micro-heavenly path. Significant emperor figures could no longer pose a threat to him. The 2 devil emperor-level figures had a look of curiosity in their eyes. Before this, they had heard rumors that even though Yi Futian had yet to reach the imperial realm, he had caused Haotian the Great to flee in defeat. How exactly had this white-haired youth managed to do so? They even wanted to test Yi Futian to see how he fought against a great emperor. From the looks of it, there are old monstrous ancient emperors in each world, and they have all gradually returned, Yi Futian thought to himself. He was also very curious. During the collapse of the heavenly path, the various gods had perished. How did this happen to all of them? From the looks of it, they had encountered a great calamity. However, not all of them had died. Many great emperors had been waiting for the opportunity to return once again. After the world had undergone a huge change, they began to re-emerge. The divine prefecture, the human realm, and the devil world had such figures. In another location, there were also cultivators from the dark world. They similarly had imperial realm figures in their midst. Lord Shaman was also among their numbers. Lord Shaman, who had reached the great emperor to be plane, still had a very menacing aura. He was already on the path of the emperor and on track to become a great emperor in the future. Yu Sheng, Yi Futian shouted. He asked, "Why have you come to Yi Imperial Palace?" The cultivators of the devil world and the dark world came together. This was not for Yu Sheng's personal matters. This was the will of 2 emperor-level forces. Yu Sheng had not come looking for Yi Futian alone. If so, what were they here for? Yu Sheng looked at Yi Futian and said over transmitted thoughts, "Devil Emperor wants you to head to the Divine Prefecture and deal with Haotian the Great and the others. In the meantime, he will make a trip to Donghuang Imperial Palace." Yusheng looked at Yi Futian and said over transmitted thoughts, Devil Emperor wants you to head to the Divine Prefecture and deal with Haotian the Great and the others. In the meantime, he will make a trip to Donghuang Imperial Palace. When Yi Futian heard Yusheng's thoughts, he revealed a strange look. What was the Devil Emperor planning? Was the Devil Emperor testing Yi Futian? Or was the former using him to kill others, using his hands to deal with a great emperor figure of the Divine Prefecture, and paving the way for the former's battle against Donghuang the Great several years later? After all, it wouldn't be long until the end of Donghuang the Great's 500 years of fate of the emperor. The Dark World would also participate. The Devil Emperor would head over to Donghuang Imperial Palace to meet Donghuang the Great. This was done to make it convenient for Yi Futian to act. The Devil Emperor intended for Donghuang the Great to be unable to interfere. Dark Sovereign knows that Palace Lord Yi has deep grudges with the ancient god clans of the Divine Prefecture. Hence, he wanted us to accompany you to the Divine Prefecture to seek revenge, Yan Gi said as he looked toward Yi Futian. Palace Lord Yi, are you confident that you can kill Haotian the Great and the others? Yan Gi was the top demon sage of the Devil World and had extremely high standing. His abilities were also super powerful. Nevertheless, he had to refer to Yi Futian as Palace Lord Yi now. Even though Yan Gi had already reached the Great Emperor to be plain, Yi Futian could defeat Great Emperors. Yi Futian glanced at the cultivators of the two major forces. From the looks of it, he did not have a choice. Moreover, they had come to support him in seeking revenge. I don't know, replied Yi Futian. After all, they are great emperors. However, if all of you are willing to lend a hand, I believe there won't be any problems. Yan Gi said, we are heading over to provide support. Everything else will still depend on Palace Lord Yi. In the meantime, His Highness Devil Emperor will head over to Donghuang Imperial Palace and chat with Donghuang the Great to stall for you. They would not participate in his battles. This was a matter between Yi Futian and the major ancient god clans of the Divine Prefecture. All right, Yi Futian said as he nodded. Since His Highness Devil Emperor is willing to lend me a hand, how can I possibly turn down his kindness? However, I do not know how things will end. If my abilities are lacking, I will still need your help. Rest assured, Palace Lord Yi, answered Yan Gi as he nodded his head. Since you have agreed, shall we head out immediately? Responded Yi Futian as he nodded his head. He informed the members of Yi Imperial Palace and then immediately left with the cultivators of the two emperor-level forces. Although Yi Futian already planned to seek revenge, being escorted over was not how he imagined it. Was the Devil Emperor hoping that Yi Futian would directly wage war against the Divine Prefecture? The group left the Ruins continent and descended upon the Divine Prefecture. They headed straight toward the Haotian clan in the Nantian domain. According to their sources, the remnants of the ancient god clans were all there. They had gathered together over there to prevent Yi Futian from seeking revenge against them. After all, Yi Futian could already put up a fight against Haotian the Great. They had to be cautious. While they were going to the Divine Prefecture, Donghuang the Great was cultivating in Donghuang Imperial Palace. A divine palace was erected amidst the churning clouds. The figure of Donghuang the Great could be seen sitting in front of the palace, surrounded by misty clouds. He opened his eyes and revealed a profound expression. Then he laughed softly and said, after a few centuries, the Devil Emperor has actually personally come over again. Your visit has caught me by surprise. Last time, you came to my Devil Imperial Palace, yet you left without stopping for a visit. I have come today to reciprocate your courtesy. A voice sounded, followed by clouds shifting in the sky. An elder appeared. He stood casually with his hands behind his back. He slowly walked toward Donghuang the Great. He seemed like an ordinary old man. No one would have guessed that he was the domineering Devil Emperor who ruled over all corners of the Devil World. The Devil Emperor referred to the incident where the Devil World captured Donghuang Diu. At that time, Donghuang the Great made a trip to Devil Imperial Palace to bring her back. Take a seat, Donghuang the Great said as he gestured. He sounded very courteous when he invited the Devil Emperor to sit in front of him, as though the two of them were long-lost friends. The Devil Emperor did not turn down the offer either. He sat near Donghuang the Great. The latter waved his hand, and a Weiqi board popped up between the two of them. He said, "Your Highness, since you have come, why don't we have a match?" "All right." The Devil Emperor nodded in agreement as he shifted his attention towards the board. "Your Highness is the guest. You may go first," Donghuang the Great said as he gestured. The Devil Emperor took a white stone and put it on the board. At the same time he said, "Donghuang, do you have news of my brother?" Donghuang the Great shook his head. As he placed a black stone on the board, he replied, "Just like you, I have not received any news about him for a long time." "Is that so?" The Devil Emperor followed up with another white stone. His tone was laced with suspicion. "It's absolutely true," Donghuang the Great replied. He sounded earnest, seemingly not hiding anything from the other party. "Who set up the heavenly path in the Heavenly Emperor realm?" The Devil Emperor did not pester Donghuang the Great on the same issue. Instead, he moved on to another issue and asked about the heavenly path that pressured the heaven realm. "Your Highness, what do you think?" Donghuang the Great raised his head and glanced at the Devil Emperor. He answered with another question. "If I knew the answer, I wouldn't have asked," the Devil Emperor said with a smile. He sounded casual as he brought up yet another topic, saying, "In the past, when the goddess of the heaven realm first showed her face to the world, no one could hold a candle to her beauty and ability. Let alone ladies, there were very few men in the world who could put up a fight with her. She was also the dream girl for countless men." Donghuang the Great revealed a brilliant smile. His eyes glistened with gentleness as he mumbled, "She was the best among all women." The Devil Emperor smiled and continued, "You are admirable. Such a talented lady actually became your wife. She was also willing to give you a descendant." Donghuang the Great's gaze turned mellow as he commented with a smile, "She played a big part in helping Yi Qing and me to become great emperors. As the person with the most outstanding temperament at that time, you were indeed the only person who was a good match for her. Both of you made an admirable couple. Therefore, surely you have a lot of pent-up hatred." As the Devil Emperor said this, he did not forget to place a stone on the Weiqi board. He looked up at Donghuang the Great, wanting to observe the other party's expression. However, Donghuang the Great's expression was normal, seemingly unchanged. He still wore a gentle expression. "These are all things of the past. Why do you bring them up? Could it be that you came over to talk about these matters?" asked Donghuang the Great. If outsiders heard their conversation, they would truly believe that the two of them were best friends casually having a chat. Just as the two of them were talking in Donghuang Imperial Palace, Yi Futian's group arrived at the territory of the Haotian clan in the Nantian domain. Haotian city trembled violently. Back then, Yi Futian had slaughtered his way here before. Later on, Haotian the Great had tried to take revenge when he became a great emperor, but he had been unable to destroy Yi Imperial Palace. Today, Yi Futian had descended upon the city once again. Terrifying pressure enveloped Haotian city. The Haotian clan naturally felt this pressure. Faced with such pressure, countless cultivators in the city felt like worshipping the powerful cultivator who emanated it. Although Yi Futian had yet to become a great emperor, his might was comparable to one. The cultivators in the Haotian clan all raised their heads to stare at the figure above. Yi Futian stood in the high heavens like a god. The cultivators in the Haotian clan all raised their heads to stare at the figure above. Yi Futian stood in the high heavens like a god. Haotian the Great, Heavenly Emperor Jiang, and the others also appeared in the sky. The remaining four major ancient god clans had allied. Haotian the Great was the first to attain a breakthrough and reach the imperial realm. Therefore, Heavenly Emperor Jiang, Yuanshi the Great, and Wuyang the Great had gathered here, out of the fear that Yi Futian would visit their ancient god clans to eradicate them. In reality, it had not been long since their last battle. However, he had been cultivating for a long time now due to Yi Futian's unique law of time. Aside from Haotian the Great, only Yuanshi the Great had become a great emperor. The other two were still one step away from proving their ways. They remained as great emperors to be. They planned to attack Yi Imperial Palace after all four of them had regained their status as great emperors. They would have a better chance of killing Yi Futian then. In their opinion, Yi Futian improved at a faster rate than them, but with the combined power of 4 great emperors, they were confident that they could slay him. Unfortunately, they had not expected Yi Futian to be capable of changing the speed of time in his world of the micro-heavenly path. Actually, the longer they spent making preparations, the less advantageous they were. The cultivators of the devil world and the dark world are here too. What are they doing here? Thought the cultivators of the Haotian clan as they looked at Yu Sheng and the others. Haotian the Great asked right away, "This territory is part of the divine prefecture. For the cultivators of Devil Imperial Palace and the Dark Court to come here, do you plan to trigger a war among the 3 worlds?" Currently, the situation was chaotic everywhere. Even though the various parties had yet to declare war on each other, it was rather provocative for the cultivators of the Devil World and the Dark World to appear here. Haotian the Great naturally had to drag Donghuang Imperial Palace into this mess. Otherwise, the Haotian clan would not withstand 3 significant forces on their own. "We're just here to spectate the fight," Lord Shaman from the Dark Court replied. The Dark Court had no intention of joining the battle. Before this, Lord Shaman was greatly shocked when he heard that Yi Futian could force a great emperor to retreat. In the past, he had intended to kill Yi Futian. Now, Yi Futian had actually surpassed him. On the other hand, he still remained at the great emperor to be plain. "You're here to spectate the fight?" Haotian the Great mumbled as he relaxed slightly. There were quite a few returning ancient great emperors among the lineup of the other party. If they declared war on the ancient god clans, the latter would lose miserably. Since they were only here as spectators, Haotian the Great was still confident that he and Yuanshi the Great could take Yi Futian head-on. They might even be able to kill him now. Haotian the Great did not believe that Yi Futian had improved much in such a short amount of time since they last met. In the heavens above, Yi Futian took a step forward. The other cultivators appeared in different spots in the sky, but they stayed clear of the battlefield. Yi Futian lowered his head to glance at the Haotian clan. A glance from him was enough to make the cultivators of the Haotian clan feel as though a blazing sun had appeared above their heads. The sun shone down on them and radiated the brilliant divine power of the sun everywhere the sunlight covered. The space was set ablaze as the temperature rose. Endless currents of divine fire flowed in space. Many cultivators sensed that their spiritual souls would be crushed under the scorching heat. Their souls would be burnt to ashes. But Yuanshi the Great's will shifted, and a terrifying divine matrix instantly appeared above Haotian City. This divine matrix was filled with a destructive aura similar to the force of divine punishment of the heavenly path. The divine power of the sun rained down and was negated by the divine matrix. It could not penetrate the latter. Yi Futian glanced at Yuanshi the Great. He obviously had noticed that the other party was now a great emperor. The current Haotian clan had 2 returning great emperors. Yet Yi Futian was not afraid. He could already put up a fight against Haotian the Great back then. After cultivating for several years, his micro-heavenly path had evolved, and his various attributes had grown much more powerful than before. His divine power has grown stronger. Haotian the Great told Yuanshi the Great over transmitted thoughts when he detected the might of the divine power of the sun. Its menacing power covered the divine matrix. Although the former was being negated by the latter, it still was threatening. The divine power of the sun was not Yi Futian's strongest divine power. It was a power he could casually unleash from his gaze. "I will trap him, then we can kill him together," Haotian the Great continued. His will shifted, and he immediately transformed into the god of Haotian. The vast space became his world as his will enveloped the entire city. All the cultivators were within his domain. Beneath the Haotian divine domain, Haotian the Great's figure disappeared. He merged with the vast space and appeared above Yi Futian. Yuanshi the Great's will shifted, and an unparalleled destructive storm immediately surged out from the divine matrix that he forged. Countless beams of divine light shot up into the sky. They shot up towards where Yi Futian was. Each aura contained frightening destructive power. Yi Futian's figure formed a phantasm. It was a divine body. Back then, he self-proclaimed it as the divine body of the heavenly path. Now, he had created the micro-heavenly path, making it a true divine body of the heavenly path. It was immovable. The divine power landed on the divine body but could not cause it any harm. Yuanshi the Great formed divine seals with his hands. A gigantic silhouette of a Tianshan instantly appeared in the sky and covered his figure. Similar to Yi Futian, this was also his phantasm. When it appeared, the storm also moved with it. As the silhouette grew larger, the surrounding storm became even more terrifying. The hearts of all the cultivators of Futian City were trembling. They stood within the city, feeling like ants. These great emperors could turn them all to dust by extending a finger. These were great emperors. They were true Tianshans, existences who stood at the peak. Right now, Yuanshi the Great had a significant impact on them. He was like a deity who governed the divine punishments of the world and who could judge sinners. The divine matrix contained the power of divine punishment. The menacing force of divine punishment covered the vast space and directly enveloped Yi Futian. Right now, it was as though Yi Futian was in the eye of a destructive storm. The storm rampaged, and the power of divine punishment was constantly brewing. "Die!" uttered the divine silhouette formed by Yuanshi the Great. Murderous intent filled the skies as the destructive storm gathered where Yi Futian was standing. It was as though the force of divine punishment from the heavenly path had descended to destroy all of existence. Around Yi Futian's figure, countless beads appeared. The beads then formed spheres that circled him. They coalesced from the divine power of the world that he had released from his body. Each bead was an independent space that had coalesced into a sphere and orbited his figure, blocking off the destructive, massacring power. The menacing, massacring power rampaged towards him and collided with the beads. A sharp screech filled the air. The space seemed to be torn to shreds as destructive bands of light swept out. The spheres were being ripped apart gradually. It appeared that the divine power of the world was still insufficient to block the attack of a returning ancient emperor. At the same time, Futian the Great also struck downwards. A menacing Futian Madra came charging down, descending upon Yi Futian's defenses. The cracks in his defenses immediately expanded. Yi Futian stood still as he sensed all this. His hands swept across his surroundings. Time and space seemed to be distorted. The rampaging storm flowed into the warped space and disappeared without a trace. Is this an application of the divine force of space? Someone thought out loud. All the surrounding cultivators were staring at the battle between Yi Futian and the two great emperors. Is this an application of the divine force of space? Someone thought out loud. All the surrounding cultivators were staring at the battle between Yi Futian and the two great emperors. Divine power circled him. His defensive power was extremely terrifying. It appeared to be the divine power of the world. As for the warped storm that was now unleashing divine light, it seemed to be a powerful application of the divine force of space. As the two great emperors, Futian the Great and Yuanshi the Great, unleashed a combined attack, the absolute defense forged from the divine power of the world was shattered. Countless beams of the divine light of the heavenly penalty shot towards Yi Futian's figure. Yet, they were consumed by the storm. It was as though a chaotic current of time and space had formed around Yi Futian's figure. This chaotic current was like a black hole. It was extremely terrifying. Yuanshi the Great pointed a finger to the sky. Even more menacing might burst forth from the divine matrix. Endless attacks surged towards Yi Futian, burying the area where he stood. Futian the Great did not stand by idly. He similarly attacked. Countless Futian divine seals crashed down, attempting to shatter the divine power around Yi Futian. Yi Futian's figure was buried. The cultivators from the outside world could no longer detect him. They could only see the endless attacks as well as the warped storm that circled Yi Futian's body. The cultivators in Futian City felt their hearts racing. They did not expect to witness a god-level battle today. This was a war among great emperors. Two great emperors besieged Yi Futian to kill him. Even though Yi Futian had yet to become a great emperor, he was already comparable to one in terms of ability. Therefore, he could be counted as one of them. The terrifying destructive might and the endless attacks did not stand a chance when faced with the distorted space and were consumed by the latter. The spatial storm grew larger and covered this part of the sky. The attacks from the two great emperors failed to penetrate it. What kind of defense is this? Thought Yen Guyi as he observed the fight. He was astonished. As the top demon sage in the devil world, he was arrogant. Nevertheless, he paid close attention to Yi Futian's development since the latter visited Devil Imperial Palace. Yi Futian's improvement surpassed Yen Guyi's imagination and had reached a shocking stage. Yi Futian's defense alone was sufficient to put the two great emperors in a predicament. His attack will be as powerful as his defense, Yuxing commented. He seemed to have a lot of confidence in Yi Futian. Yi Futian always paid attention to both his defense and offense to cover all grounds. He seemed to be judging how much of what Dong Huang the Great said was true. In your opinion, who will win this battle? The Devil Emperor continued asking. Dong Huang the Great looked towards the battlefield and said, Yi Futian. I think so too, replied the Devil Emperor with a smile as he also turned to look at the battlefield. Right now, on the battlefield, the attacks of the two great emperors still could not break through Yi Futian's defenses. Haotian the Great's gaze was as cold as ice. In the sky above, a Haotian great palm grabbed out at Yi Futian. He was attempting to crush the space with his gigantic palm. When Yuanshi the Great saw this scene, he ceased attacking. He watched the great palm that blocked out the sky attentively. Under the watch of countless gazes, the great palm came down and grabbed at where Yi Futian stood. When it landed, the warped storm actually crumbled it gradually. The gigantic great palm shattered and was frenziedly swept into the storm. What kind of divine power is this? Wondered the top figures of the devil world and the dark world. Their hearts trembled violently as they witnessed this shocking scene unfold before their eyes. The Haotian great palm crumbled frenziedly, and the falling pieces were sucked into the storm. The speed of consumption was astonishing. When the great palm entered into the region of the swirling space, the crowd noticed that time flowed differently in that space. Nevertheless, the great palm still managed to crush the swirling storm as it was sucked into the latter due to its enormous size. The distorted space was similarly collapsing. Both attacks disintegrated. Right at this moment, a beam of divine light flashed. A figure appeared amidst the raging storm. He was none other than Yi Futian. He transformed into a beam of light. With a spear in his hand, he freed himself from the besiegement and charged forward. His speed was incredulously fast. In an instant, he appeared in front of Yuanshi the Great. The spear in Yi Futian's hand stabbed out. For a figure at his level, he could attack even across vast distances. However, Yi Futian chose to fight in close quarters. As the spear stabbed out, Yuanshi the Great saw the tip of the spear warp space and time, just like the defensive power around Yi Futian's figure. However, this time, it was used to attack instead. Yuanshi the Great had already proven his way and reached the Great Emperor plane. Yet, against such an attack, his heart seemed to stop beating. The entire world fell silent, and he sensed an absolute threat. This attack could kill him. A blinding divine light dazzled, and Yuanshi the Great transformed himself. His entire person was integrated into the heavenly penalty divine matrix, which resembled a divine diagram of destruction. The destructive power that erupted from it shrouded the entire Haotian divine domain. A blinding divine light dazzled, and Yuanshi the Great transformed himself. His entire person was integrated into the heavenly penalty divine matrix, which resembled a divine diagram of destruction. The destructive power that erupted from it shrouded the entire Haotian divine domain. Yi Futian came down with a spear and stabbed it into the divine matrix. In an instant, with the spear's tip as the center, an unparalleled terrifying hurricane formed. Time and space seemed distorted as an ominous boom was heard. The divine matrix disintegrated and collapsed as it was caught in the hurricane. The power of that one point instantly spread all over this space. All the destructive forces around it were sucked inside and torn to shreds. The collapsed divine matrix was still capable of launching unprecedented destructive attacks at Yi Futian. However, Yi Futian was tucked within the distorted storm of time and space, so the attacks could not get close to him. All the cultivators watched what took place in front of them in utter shock. All of this happened in a second. That boundless and massive divine matrix was swallowed up in a blink of an eye. The cultivators in the imperial realm felt the power of that blow and watched intently at the center of the vortex. They felt that the time and space there seemed to be chaotic and completely different from those inside the Futian divine domain. This strike contained the force of time and space. What kind of power of law had he comprehended? Bang! A loud boom was heard as the gigantic divine matrix was shattered. Someone was seen escaping from that space in a bit of humiliated fashion. It turned out to be Yuanshi the Great. He returned to his former standing countless years ago as a peak existence by proving his way to the imperial realm. But he never expected that he would end up in such an embarrassing state by a youngster. Ugh! A great emperor had just spat up blood because of a single blow. This was enough to make everyone in the ancient god clan tremble. All of them watched that white-haired man in horror. He was already so powerful? Likewise, Futian the Great's heart was beating wildly. He already felt that he might not shake Futian an inch while the man could still threaten him and Yuanshi the Great with his attacks. At this time, Futian's divine body was blooming with a dazzling divine light as divine power circulated all around him, turning into numerous long spears. Each spear contained incomparably fantastic power. Countless spears gathered together and surrounded Futian. His eyes were so cold, as there was a murderous intent within them. With a single thought, the spears broke through the air and attacked Futian the Great and Yuanshi the Great at the same time in the place below where the Futian clan was located. Yuanshi the Great could not afford to be careless. He had been injured already. At this moment, he gathered the divine power to transform. Infinite divine light surrounded him as if he was the deity in charge of the heavenly penalty. The divine power gathered into the sword of heavenly penalty, which was massive and humongous. Now it lanced forward. Infinite heavenly penalty divine light roared at the same time and lashed out, colliding with the long spear that came in for the kill. Immediately, there was pure pandemonium between heaven and earth. Futian the Great blasted out the infinite handprints as well, which collided with those long spears. Futian handprints crumbled and shattered like mad upon impact. The attacks from Futian the Great no longer seemed as powerful as Futian's. It was not until the gigantic Futian handprint appeared that it finally blocked the spear attacks. However, Futian clan was not so lucky. The terrifying long spear directly broke through the defensive power created by the Great Emperor and continued the attacks there. The two Great Emperors-to-be were not enough anymore, and it was apparent they could not stop the onslaught. Futian the Great's thought moved slightly, and the entire Futian clan was immediately covered by the vast sky. It seemed as if there was a canopy that had fallen, blocking Futian's spear attacks. Futian raised his head and looked up. A massive spear appeared before him as he slammed both hands forward. Suddenly, a gigantic long spear ripped through the space and blasted towards the other side. As another shocking boom came out, the defense collapsed, and countless destructive lightning struck down. In an instant, the vast and boundless Futian clan was attacked. It seemed as if the apocalypse was upon them. It was the fire of anger that came from the gods themselves. Bang bang bang. Countless structures vanished into smokes and ashes. Many cultivators from the Futian clan didn't even have a chance to let out their screams before they were immolated. Those who were hit by the divine power vanished instantly, leaving no traces behind. This time, the cultivators of the ancient god clan had gathered inside the Futian clan. This blow inflicted heavy casualties. Futian did not mean to show any mercy. Back then, what kind of misery did the ancient god clan inflict upon Futian? After repeated joint attacks and suppression, they went to Imperial Palace to destroy it. Therefore, Futian did not have the slightest sympathy for the ancient god clan now. Those who survived looked up in desperation at the man who hovered above the sky. The ancient god clan, two great emperors, and the two great emperors-to-be could not take down Futian and were hunted by him instead. In Donghuang Imperial Palace, the Devil Emperor stared at Donghuang the Great, who was making his move. His eyes were deep and unfathomable. No one could tell what he was thinking. In Donghuang Imperial Palace, the Devil Emperor stared at Donghuang the Great, who was making his move. His eyes were deep and unfathomable. No one could tell what he was thinking. At this time, Dong Huang was still sitting opposite of him, but he was facing the position of the passage. Separated by the boundless space, the revelation divine power descended regardless of distance or space. This kind of ability had far exceeded the understanding of ordinary cultivators in Futian City. In the land of the divine prefecture, countless cultivators were believers in Dong Huang the Great. However, they had never seen Dong Huang the Great make a move until today. With a single thought, Dong Huang the Great had made his divine power descend across the vast and boundless space. This power suppressed Yi Futian, who had defeated Futian the Great and Yuanshi the Great. This suppression was so complete that Yi Futian could not fight back. Only then did everyone realize how truly terrifying the master of the divine prefecture was. Yi Futian's divine power roared fiercely upon him. He raised his head to look at the sky, his body stubbornly moving upward against the momentum despite being under the suppression of the revelation divine power. He seemed unyielding. He wanted to see how powerful Dong Huang the Great was. Buzz. An even more terrifying divine might pressed downward as endless divine glory sprinkled down from the firmament. Futian divine domain was suppressed to the point of disappearing altogether, as Yi Futian's body was forced to fall from the sky. His divine power was being suppressed around his body. Yi Futian looked at Dong Huang the Great across the distance only to hear Dong Huang the Great say, "Until you can come to the imperial palace and stand in front of me, you may not roam and rampage in the divine prefecture." When his voice faded, countless paths came rushing down. Yi Futian grunted, and his face paled. He felt his divine body was being suppressed as his body fell from the air again. He had no way to contend with his opponent at all. He had cultivated to the current state and created his own micro-heavenly path, which was enough to shake the great emperors. Among the two great emperors, Yuanshi the Great was wounded. Futian the Great couldn't do much to him. If he continued the fight, he felt his advantage would only grow. But even so, he couldn't stop the suppression from Dong Huang the Great's divine power. Today, the 6 beings standing at the top of the world were more powerful than he imagined. "Very well, I will be looking forward to that day," Yi Futian responded and retracted his divine power. He understood that he was only in the realm of Emperor-to-be, which accounted for the gap between them. Even if he was able to defeat some great emperors with the help of the micro-heavenly path, Dong Huang the Great was beyond the realm of ordinary great emperors. To be able to fight against Dong Huang the Great, he would probably need to wait until his micro-heavenly path was perfected. Likewise, the revelation divine power also retracted, and everything returned to normal. Futian the Great and Yuanshi the Great both stared at Yi Futian. They could have never thought that when they returned to the imperial realm, they would be greeted not by glory but humiliation and defeat. The suppression of Yi Futian and the strength of Dong Huang the Great made their return as ancient emperors seem so small and insignificant. It was as if they were not worth mentioning. The times had truly changed. After the collapse of the heavenly path, the era did not seem to be an era they could understand anymore. Now, a brand new era was coming, but they would no longer be its main players. Yi Futian glanced at the cultivators from the Devil Imperial Palace and the Dark Court. Both parties had invited him to come here. But now that he had done what he could, the Devil Emperor did not stop Dong Huang the Great from moving against him. "Go back," the Devil Emperor, who was next to Dong Huang the Great, urged as well. The rest of the cultivators nodded as they began leaving. Yi Futian glanced at the 2 figures above the sky and stepped away himself. They were still several years in, and in his world, it was decades. After they left, the cultivators in Futian City looked at the state of the Futian clan at this moment. They were dead silent. The entire Futian clan had been destroyed. Previously, Yi Futian had nearly razed it to the ground with a single blow. The ancient god clan had lost many cultivators, and it was a tragic sight. At this moment, the ancient god clan was desolate. How could those glorious ancient god clans in the divine prefecture, the top forces that once dominated the land of the divine prefecture, end up like this? More importantly, this was after the return of the great emperors. Shouldn't this be their time of revival? Everyone's heart was heavy. It felt like they were being crushed by a giant boulder, making them feel beyond depressed. And that boulder was none other than Yi Futian. Dong Huang the Great had the power now, yet he did not end Yi Futian. Did he intend to wait until Yi Futian was elevated into the imperial realm? What would happen if Dong Huang the Great was defeated at the 500-year mark? What would happen then? That was something no one dared to contemplate. If that were the case, the ancient god clan would undoubtedly be destroyed. In Dong Huang Imperial Palace, Dong Huang the Great retracted his divine might as the passageway disappeared. He sat there quietly, his attention focused on the chessboard, and then he made his move. Everything was business as usual, like nothing had happened moments ago. The Devil Emperor held a chess piece in hand as he looked intently at Dong Huang the Great. He said with a smile, "Your divine power has increased again. 500 years of cultivation. How can there be no progress?" Dong Huang the Great raised his head and responded, "You must be the same as well. Under the Devil's Abyss, bearing the tribulation of the Devil's Abyss, and baptized by it. The actual level of your strength today was difficult to estimate. Devil's Abyss was known as the prison of the heavenly path, and it was not a simple contraption." A smile appeared in those profound eyes of the Devil Emperor as he stared intently on Dong Huang the Great. He said, "Dong Huang, you won't kill Yi Futian now? Do you want to wait until he is an emperor and destroys Dong Huang Imperial Palace to stand before you? Do you want to allow him a chance to do all that he wants to do? Is it because you feel guilty about Emperor Yi Qing's death and you want to make it up to his descendants?" "Your Majesty is overthinking," Dong Huang the Great said with a smile. "Of course, there is guilt in my heart, but it's not what you think." "If I'm wrong," the Devil Emperor's eyes were unfathomable as he stared into the eyes of Dong Huang the Great and said, "Then, that's even more interesting." "You lost," Dong Huang the Great said as he made his last move on the chessboard. The Devil Emperor looked down, then got up with a hearty laugh. "Then, I guess I'll take a look at this game and see who is playing and how it is played." With that, the Devil Emperor took a single step, then disappeared from Dong Huang Imperial Palace. After he left, several people came over and bowed to salute Dong Huang the Great. The person in the lead was the Princess of the Divine Prefecture, Dong Huang Din. "Your Majesty, what is the purpose of this move by the Devil Emperor?" Li Daoshou, who was next to Dong Huang Dian, asked curiously. "Moreover, it seems that it was the will of the Dark Sovereign to goad Yi Futian to come here to the Divine Prefecture, thus intensifying the grievances between the Divine Prefecture and Yi Futian, no?" Dong Huang the Great looked into the distance. Those tranquil eyes of his were so clear that it was as if he could see through everything in this world. Perhaps as a test, Dong Huang the Great responded. Then he looked at Dong Huang Dian and the rest of the people and said, "The world has changed drastically with ancient emperors who have returned one after the other. The future has to be a mighty era. In the past, you were all powerful figures standing at the top, but now, you must focus on cultivating harder than ever before and strive to step onto the path of the emperors as soon as possible." "Yes, Your Majesty." Several of them bowed to salute him again. They too had sensed the pressure. Was the remark from Dong Huang the Great suggesting that Dong Huang Imperial Palace was facing some crisis? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.